I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
The inalienable rights of the Palestinian people must be realized, international law must be respected, and accountability ensured.
As a key crossing into Gaza reopens, questions remain about the future of the territory and what lies ahead for the next phase of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Another candidate joins the race to become the next UN Secretary General.
I believe that working through the UN, we can ensure that AI serves all of humanity.
Capitalizing on technological advances without leaving anyone behind. A conversation on the risks and rewards of artificial intelligence. Next.
Acts of terror pose threats to peace and security around the world. This week, the UN Security Council held a session on the dangers posed by groups like ISIL.
The threat posed by Daesh increased steadily since the previous report, remaining multipolar and increasingly complex. The group and its affiliates continue to adapt and demonstrate resilience despite sustained counterterrorism pressure. They continue to recruit foreign terrorist fighters and to enhance their use of new and emerging technologies. Daesh has also been able to maintain access to funding streams through opportunistic fundraising, unlawful taxation, and kidnapping for ransom.
Amid vast changes across the United Nations system, we must not lose sight of our shared goal to preserve international peace and security. The efforts of the United Nations to address Daesh threat are critical. These efforts require adequate resources and the cooperation of all member states to achieve our shared goal, a world free from terrorism.
This month will mark the 4th anniversary of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. With fighting often endangering nuclear power plants, the International Atomic Energy Agency says the conflict poses the world's greatest threat to nuclear safety. IAEA teams are deployed at nuclear plants in the region and are closely monitoring the conflict and its impact on nuclear facilities.
We are all, of course, extremely concerned by the ongoing war, and here at the IAEA on its impact on nuclear safety. We have demonstrated from the start how it is possible to make good use of an international institution like the IAEA to prevent escalation and provide certain stability and predictability in the inevitably fluctuating scenario of an ongoing war. This requires focus, compromise, and a sense of responsibility.
The brutal conflict and humanitarian disaster in Sudan remains an urgent priority for the United Kingdom. We're working tirelessly, using every diplomatic tool at our disposal to push the parties to agree a ceasefire to end this devastating war.
The conflict in Sudan is expected to be a high priority this month as the UK takes over the Security Council presidency for February. Chargé d'Affaires James Kariuki also highlighted the conflict in Ukraine and the next steps for Gaza as key agenda items for the month. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has held for months, but Gaza still faces a lot of uncertainty. Conditions have improved with more aid reaching those in need. This week, the Rafah crossing connecting Gaza and Egypt partially reopened after more than a year and a half. It will allow more movement for medical treatment and other humanitarian needs. But there are questions about the next phases of the peace deal, including the organization created to help oversee the plan, the U.S.-formed Board of Peace. Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed concerns about the board's reach and other key global issues as he laid out priorities for his final year in office.
US President Donald Trump's newly formed Board of Peace has a mandate from the United Nations Security Council to act only with regard to Gaza. But its charter fails to mention Gaza and says it will work to secure enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. Analysts question whether the Board of Peace will rival the work of the UN Security Council in mediating global disputes. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the only body mandated to do that work was the United Nations.
Basic responsibility for international peace and security lies with the UN, lies with the Security Council, that, as you know, the Security Council stands alone in its charter-mandated authority to act on behalf of all members in questions of peace and security.
The Secretary-General's comments came as part of his annual press conference to lay out his priorities for the year, in which at many points he outlined many of the grim realities the world faces today. Guterres said international law is trampled and cooperation is eroding. Notably, Guterres said global problems will not be solved by one power calling the shots without naming the United States by name. He also addressed the situation in Iran, after President Trump wrote online that a massive armada is heading to Iran, threatening military action there unless Tehran comes to the table and agrees to a deal to have no nuclear power. Guterres urged de-escalation before it was too late.
I think it's absolutely essential that dialogue prevails. I strongly encourage dialogue to take profit of the offers of mediation that have been expressed. We do not want to see, and I believe the Iranians tell us that they also do not want to have nuclear weapons. So if that is the case, all the conditions are there for a serious negotiation to take place, and I encourage the parties to seriously negotiate in order to avoid a confrontation that would be a tragedy.
Meanwhile, Guterres spoke of China's role at the United Nations and told reporters that Beijing continues to advocate for values important to the organization.
I think that we need to move into a multipolar world, and we need simultaneously to have multilateral institutions. And I have to say that China has been consistently advocating for the need of multilateralism.
Guterres also made another plea for Security Council reform on Thursday, suggesting that there should be permanent members from Africa and Latin America, and pointing out that Asia was underrepresented. Mitch McCann, CGTN, at the UN in New York.
There is a new candidate to become the next UN Secretary General. Chile nominated its former president, Michelle Bachelet. She joins Argentine diplomat and Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Mariano Grossi, as a formal candidate. Brazil and Mexico are also supporting Bachelet's candidacy. She has experience in top UN positions, having served as High Commissioner of Human Rights and as Executive Director of UN Women. Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda.
Civilians are caught in the crossfire, losing their lives, their homes, with over 200,000 people reportedly displaced by the Jonglei conflict this month alone.
There's growing concern about increasing violence in South Sudan. Clashes between government and opposition forces have intensified. The fighting is also disrupting attempts to deliver much-needed humanitarian aid. The World Food Program is trying to reach people impacted by Mozambique's worst flooding in decades. Rising water in the country's central and southern regions has impacted more than 700,000 and made about 1,500 kilometers of roadway impassable. Convoys are rolling to help address humanitarian needs in Syria. Trucks carrying food and supplies are heading for areas affected by recent conflicts.
Coming up.
With any powerful technology, there come benefits and there come risks.
UN Insider.
No one again he can hold him
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
I have just submitted for the consideration of the General Assembly a list of 40 distinguished individuals from every region to serve on the new independent international scientific panel on artificial intelligence. The panel is a direct response to the mandate given by member states in the Pact for the Future to strengthen multilateral solutions for emerging technologies that are reshaping every aspect of our lives.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced a new AI panel this week. It will be the first global independent body dedicated to closing the AI knowledge gap. The members hail from 37 different countries, including China and the U.S. Each member will serve a 3-year term. Artificial intelligence may be one of the defining issues of our time. How can the world reap the benefits, avoid the pitfalls, and make sure no one is left behind? I sat down with the UN's tech envoy, Amandeep Singh Gill. Undersecretary General, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Can you summarize some of the potential risks and the benefits of artificial intelligence? And what would you say which principles guide your office when it comes to the governance of this ever-changing technology?
With any powerful technology, there come benefits and there come risks. And the benefits are around leapfrogging some of the current constraints that we have in economic terms, in societal terms. So speeding up economic productivity, smart manufacturing, accelerating the green transition, moving from the current paradigm of fossil fuel dependency in industry to a more environment-friendly paradigm. There is also the risk side. This is trained on data. So that means the biases in our existing data sets, cultural, linguistic, gender, otherwise they creep into AI decisions, AI predictions. So that's one that may end up excluding some people from some of these benefits, or other ways undermining respect for human rights. There are also risks related to the immense concentration of power that comes from AI, economic power, tech power. So a lot of people will become perhaps very rich, and others may lose their jobs or may struggle with finding productive work. So between the opportunities and the risks, we have to find a wise path where opportunities are maximized for the maximum number of people, and the risks are minimized and not loaded on to a small segment of the world's population.
It seems we are seeing some impacts, some headlines from business media sites talking about mass layoffs with various global companies because of artificial intelligence. We're hearing about recent college graduates who aren't able to find entry-level jobs because some of those jobs are now being taken by AI. Can you talk about globally the inequality? Because, we see these in big countries, but the vast inequality when it comes to artificial intelligence, and who's benefiting?
Right. So there is an immense concentration of AI hardware, the chips that are used to train AI models, and data centers in a few geographies, essentially the United States and China and some parts of Europe. Likewise, the economic opportunity, the economic benefits are also concentrated in those regions. All of Africa has less than 1% of the world's data center capacity. Then there's also talent and data sets and the opportunity in the digital economy to deploy AI solutions. So we have some existing divides. 700 million people don't have access to energy. 2.7 billion people are still not connected to the internet. So the AI divide coming on top of those divides is likely to increase inequality. So this is a major concern for us at the United Nations. That's why we want to focus on building AI capacity rapidly around the world so that people everywhere can benefit from this. And that's why we are focusing on its global governance so that the risks that are coming from it, and you mentioned the shifting job landscape, so it's inevitable that jobs will be impacted. Any job that requires repetitive work, any job that requires rote learning, that is going to be impacted by AI. That, of course, will create opportunities at the higher end, but at the entry level, jobs may be impacted. I don't know, in the longer run, it may play out quite nicely, but we need to ensure that those who are getting impacted in the short run, they have the opportunities for reskilling, retraining, alternatives when their jobs are threatened by AI.
Is there one or two areas that you think are vitally important that everyone must agree on or can agree on? Is there one or two things?
I think we are putting the emphasis on three pillars: science, policy, and capacity. So the world must come together on these regular scientific assessments of the technology's direction, its impact, both in terms of opportunities and risks. So we have a collective shared understanding, and policy making can happen in the light of evidence and not based on speculation or hype. The second aspect is policy, so this global governance of AI dialogue, where we can learn from each other, where we can base our governance decisions in our shared norms at the United Nations. And third, of course, capacity, because the benefits are there, potentially huge, and each and every community, each and every country must have a minimum national capacity to be able to use AI, deploy AI, and use it in its own context to address its own challenges.
We know that only 35% of the Sustainable Development Goals are on track or showing progress. We're now less than 5 years away to 2030. Why should the public trust the UN when it comes to representing their interest in the governance of artificial intelligence?
I think because UN is the only inclusive platform globally where each and every country can be represented. And UN doesn't have its own X to grind, so it's a neutral platform, and it has the credibility and it has those norms that have been built over decades. Human rights, and you mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Agenda. Of course, there have been setbacks like, the COVID crisis, the debt crisis, which has not allowed progress to move as fast, but these are shared understandings that are already there. If we move away from the UN, then we have to redo these shared understandings. We have to again try and bring everyone onto the same platform. That platform is already there, and we need to obviously improve and reform this platform. That's why the Secretary General has embarked on the UN 80 initiative to ensure that the UN is fit for purpose for the future. And that's why we had these outcomes at the Summit of the Future and the Global Digital Compact and these decisions on governing artificial intelligence for humanity. So I believe that working through the UN, we can ensure that AI serves all of humanity, that humanity's interests are safeguarded, and that we do not lose ourselves in a kind of a race to the bottom in terms of safeguards and governance, and we do not become destructively competition-oriented, and we keep on collaborating on the benefits and the management of the risks.
Undersecretary General Amandeep Singh Gill, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Normally the rocks kind of protect you, as you see, like all the way down there. But now it doesn't, because the water is rising, so the open sea is getting to us.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Around the world, sea levels are rising in many places. That means retreating shorelines. The changes can be alarming for small islands. In Puerto Rico, there are rising concerns about the water that is steadily claiming areas that used to be dry land.
The stunning U.S. territory of Puerto Rico, at a closer glance, is literally crumbling into the sea in many places because of rising sea levels, bashing and eroding away at this island. And you'll find residents here often discussing the rising sea level. Fabiola Michelle Cortez Cadiz points to ocean waters that have already breached this natural rock barrier meant to protect the local population here in the town of Barceloneta, west of San Juan.
Normally the rocks kind of protect you, as you see, like all the way down there. But now it doesn't, because the water is rising, so the open sea is getting to us. So like, it's a lot more dangerous now.
Dangers, they say, like this partially destroyed bridge nearby, struck by massive waves during Hurricane Maria back in 2017. Tourists once crossed here to a popular hotel. The swimming pool of the hotel is all that remains today from high surf that ripped through here. Puerto Rican officials say thousands of other structures all over the island have been damaged or completely destroyed by rising sea levels in recent years. Like the town of Yabucoa in Puerto Rico, where 1,500 homes once stood, officials say, and were washed away. Many of the town's 35,000 people displaced. And back here in Barceloneta, officials say many of the 22,000 residents here are at risk of losing their homes in the future. And the government estimates 50,000 other coastal structures around Puerto Rico are at risk of falling into the sea in the coming years. And yet, despite rising sea levels, remains a construction boom of luxury condominiums and hotels being built right next to the water. blocking what little public beaches remain for local residents. That has led to protests from residents like Carlos Ramirez Sanchez, today joining others who are demanding that police here stop owners of this affluent condominium complex from completing a small seawall that would cut everyone else off from using the beach. Beaches that are supposed to remain structure-free under Puerto Rico's maritime laws. Laws that are seemingly ignored by condo owners here who asked us not to film them.
They're above the law here. They do whatever they want to do. There are all kind of people there, professional people, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're judges. There are all kind of stuff here going on. Corruption, greed.
And major hotel chains from the U.S. mainland continue to build new hotels here and making huge profits at a time when coastal property is shrinking due to rising sea levels and unprecedented coastal erosion.
What we have are hotels that are not owned by Puerto Ricans. So when you stay at a hotel in Puerto Rico, the money goes back to a bank in the States, so it is not reinvested here.
He says rising sea levels have claimed countless beaches since he was a kid.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider.